A 7-year-old girl walked 3 miles alone through Michigan cold, clutching nothing but her dead father's Harley key in her trembling hand. When she pushed open the door of the Hells Angels clubhouse, a rough cinder-block building where leather-clad giants smelled like motor oil and danger, and told them in a breaking voice that she needed to sell her daddy's motorcycle to buy medicine for her dying mother, every conversation in that room stopped. The club president's face changed the moment he heard her plea. What he promised next made hardened bikers with skull tattoos stare down at their boots so no one would see their eyes go bright. And before the sun set that day, 300 roaring engines filled her broken-down street like rolling thunder. What they did for that little girl and her cancer-stricken mother will restore your faith that sometimes the roughest-looking people have the softest hearts. If you believe no child should have to sell their father's memory just to keep their mother alive, stay with this story. Hit that subscribe button to ride with the Valiant Bikers family. We bring you real stories of brotherhood, unexpected heroes, and the kind of justice that roars on 2 wheels. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Small town or big city? Living room couch, TV or phone in your hand at midnight? We want to know. Now, let's go back to the moment Lily started walking. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but Lily was already walking. Her breath came out in small clouds of white vapor, disappearing into the frozen air like little ghosts. 7 years old, 42 pounds, 3 miles from home. She didn't have a coat thick enough for this kind of cold, just her father's old flannel shirt, the one that still smelled faintly of motor oil and Old Spice, even though he'd been gone for 8 months now. Her fingers were wrapped tight around a single key, chrome and black rubber, heavy in her palm. The key to her father's Harley-Davidson Softail, the one with the custom paint job he'd spent 2 years perfecting in their garage. Midnight blue with silver flames. He used to lift her onto the seat when she was tiny, let her pretend to steer while he made engine noises with his mouth. "Someday, baby girl," he'd say. "Someday, this beauty's all yours." Someday had come too early, and it wasn't the way he'd meant it. The fall had been quick. A scaffold failure at the construction site. They said he didn't suffer. Lily wasn't sure if that was supposed to make it better. Her mom had stopped talking for 3 days after they got the news. Just sat in the kitchen, staring at his empty coffee cup, her hand pressed against her mouth like she was physically holding the scream inside. And then, 6 months later, the universe decided one tragedy wasn't enough. The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer, the kind that doesn't negotiate, the kind that takes what it wants. Lily's feet hurt. She was wearing her school sneakers, the ones with the hole in the left toe that let the cold seep in with every step. But she couldn't think about that now. She couldn't think about the blister forming on her heel, or the way her stomach felt empty and tight at the same time. She had to think about the plan. The only plan left. The hospital had called again yesterday. Her mom's insurance, the basic policy her dad's company had given them, had run out. The treatments were $23,000 per cycle. They'd already missed 2 appointments. The nurse on the phone had been kind, but firm. Without payment, they couldn't continue care. Without care, her mother had weeks, maybe days. Lily had heard her mother crying through the bedroom wall last night. Not the loud, angry kind of crying. The quiet, surrendered kind. The kind that said she'd already started saying goodbye. And that sound, that terrible soft sobbing, had carved something hollow out of Lily's chest and replaced it with a decision she was too young to understand, but old enough to make. She would sell the Harley, her father's bike, the last physical piece of him that mattered. She would sell it, and she would use the money to buy her mother one more chance, one more treatment, one more month, one more something. The clubhouse sat on the edge of the town like a scar on clean skin. Everyone knew about it. Parents warned their kids to stay away. The police drove past, slowly, watching but not stopping. It was a place where rough men gathered, where engines roared at all hours, where the smell of leather and cigarette smoke hung permanent in the air. It was also the only place Lily knew where people understood motorcycles, where someone might actually pay real money for a vintage Harley. She'd heard her dad talk about these men before, not with fear, but with a strange kind of respect. "They're not what you think," he'd told her once, watching a pack of them ride past. "They've got a code. They take care of their own." Lily wasn't their own, but she was desperate. And desperation makes you brave in ways that have nothing to do with courage. The door was heavier than she expected, or maybe she was just weaker than she remembered being. Inside, the noise hit her like a wall. Lynyrd Skynyrd on the jukebox, the crack of pool balls, deep voices talking and laughing. The smell was overwhelming. Motor oil, leather, cigarette smoke, whiskey, and something else she couldn't name. Masculinity, maybe. Power. The moment she stepped inside, the music died. Someone had yanked the jukebox plug. The laughter stopped mid-sentence. Pool cues froze mid-stroke. 20 pairs of eyes, some brown, some blue, all hard from years of seeing too much, locked onto this small, sunburned child, standing in their doorway, holding a motorcycle key like it was a magic talisman that might save her life. Because that's exactly what it was. The man who approached her first was a mountain of a human being. They called him Bear, and it was the kind of nickname that needed no explanation. His leather vest was worn soft from decades of wear. The Hell's Angels patch across his back, stitched in silver thread, that caught the dim light. His hands were the size of dinner plates, scarred knuckles and oil-stained fingers. His face was all hard angles and permanent stubble, with eyes that had seen violence but hadn't been broken by it. He didn't crouch down to her level, didn't soften his voice or put on a fake smile. He just looked at her, really looked, and in that moment, Lily felt like he could see everything. The fear, the exhaustion, the desperate, fragile hope she was barely holding together. "I need to sell my daddy's motorcycle." The words came out smaller than she'd practiced. Shakier. But they came out. That was what mattered. Bear's expression didn't change. Behind him, the other bikers had gone completely still. Not the dangerous kind of still. The listening kind. "My mom is sick," Lily continued, and now her voice was cracking, the tears finally spilling over and running hot down her cold cheeks. "They're going to take our house. The hospital says they can't help her anymore unless we pay. And we don't have money. And I thought maybe—" Her breath hitched. "Please, can you buy it? It's a really good bike. My dad took care of it. It's worth a lot." For 3 seconds that felt like 3 years, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. In that suffocating silence, Lily's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. This was it. This was the moment where he'd either help or turn her away. And if he turned her away, she had nothing left, no plan B, no backup, just a dying mother and an eviction notice and a 7-year-old's shattered understanding of how the world was supposed to work. Then Bear did something Lily didn't expect. He knelt, slowly, deliberately, until his eyes were level with hers. Up close, she could see the details the distance had hidden. The scar through his left eyebrow, the crow's feet from years of squinting into the sun, the tattoo on his neck that said, Brotherhood, in Gothic script. "What's your name, little sister?" His voice was gravel and whiskey, but there was something underneath it. Something almost gentle. "Lily. Lily." He repeated it like he was memorizing it. "Where's your daddy now?" The question made her chest hurt. He died. Construction accident. Something changed in Bear's eyes then. Not pity. Pity was soft and useless. This was something else. Recognition, maybe. The look of a man who understood what it meant to lose people, to watch the system chew up good folks and spit out wreckage. And your mama? Cancer. Stage 4. They said she has weeks if she doesn't get treatment. But treatment costs thousands of dollars, and we don't have it. And I thought if I sold the bike... The words were tumbling now, fast and desperate. It's all we have left of him, but he would want me to use it to save her. I know he would. He loved her so much, and I can't. I can't let her die, too. Easy, Lily. Breathe. He waited while she sucked in a shaky breath. You walked here alone? She nodded. How far? 3 miles. Bear's jaw clenched so hard, Lily could see the muscle jumping under his beard. Behind him, she watched the other bikers react, some shaking their heads, some clenching their fists, one man pulling off his sunglasses to reveal eyes that were suddenly, dangerously bright. These weren't men who cried easily. These were men who'd done hard time, survived hard roads, lived hard lives where weakness got you killed. But this, a 7-year-old girl walking 3 miles in the freezing cold to sell her dead father's bike to save her dying mother. This cut through every layer of armor they'd built. Church! Now! It wasn't a request. The back room was smaller, quieter. A long wooden table scarred with cigarette burns and knife marks, chairs that didn't match. A Hells Angels flag hanging on the wall, the Death's Head logo staring down with empty sockets. Lily sat in a chair that was too big for her feet dangling 6 inches off the ground, clutching a mug of hot chocolate someone had pressed into her hands. It was the first warm thing she'd felt all day. Bear took the head of the table. His brothers arranged themselves around him. 12 men total. They all had the same look. Leather vests with patches that told stories in symbols and stitching, arms covered in ink, faces that had been weathered by wind and sun and bad decisions that somehow led to better ones. Lily, Bear said, his voice carrying the weight of command but lacking any trace of threat. I need you to tell me everything. Your mom's name, where you live, what kind of cancer, what the hospital said, what bills you got. Don't leave anything out. So she told them. Every terrible detail she'd been carrying alone. Her mother's name was Sarah, 31 years old. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, metastasized to her liver. The oncologist had been honest in that brutal medical way. Without aggressive treatment, she had 3 to 6 weeks. With treatment, maybe 6 months. Maybe a year if they were lucky. But treatment meant chemotherapy infusions twice a week at $4,000 per session, plus medications, hospital stays, scans, blood work. Her father's life insurance had been eaten up by funeral costs and mortgage payments they'd already missed. The medical bills were over $60,000 and climbing. The eviction notice gave them 14 days. The electricity company had sent a final warning. Their car had been repossessed last month. We have nothing left, Lily whispered. Except the Harley. Dad always said it was worth at least $12,000 if you found the right buyer. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought maybe that would be enough for a few treatments. Maybe enough time for a miracle. She didn't tell them the part she barely admitted to herself, that she didn't really believe in miracles anymore. That she was just buying time to say goodbye properly. That she was 7 years old and already learning the adult lesson that sometimes love isn't enough, and trying isn't enough, and even miracles have price tags. This is bullshit! The man they called Crow was on his feet, pacing like a caged animal. A 7-year-old kid walking alone through the cold to sell her dead daddy's bike because the goddamn system won't save her mother. What kind of country is this? What kind of— He couldn't finish, just shook his head, rage and helplessness warring on his face. An older biker named Preacher, ironically nicknamed because he almost never talked, spoke up in a voice like distant thunder. How much time before they evict her? 14 days, Lily said. And the hospital? Mom's next treatment was supposed to be yesterday. They sent her home without it. Bear had been silent through all of this, his eyes fixed on Lily with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. His mind was working, she could tell, calculations being made, resources being tallied. Plans forming in that space behind his eyes, where violence and protection lived in uncomfortable alliance. The bike's at your house? He finally asked. Lily nodded. In the garage. I have the key, and I know where the title is. My mom doesn't know I came here. She'd be mad if she knew. She doesn't like me doing dangerous things. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. What could be more dangerous than a dying mother, and a system that demanded payment for compassion? What could be more dangerous than being 7 and alone, and carrying adult-sized desperation in a child-sized body? Bear stood. When he moved, the room moved with him, all 12 men rising like a choreographed military unit, awaiting orders. Lily, Bear said, and there was something in his voice now that made her sit up straighter, made her heart beat faster with something that wasn't quite fear, and wasn't quite hope, but lived somewhere in between. We're going to help you, but I need you to understand something first. We're not going to buy your daddy's bike. Lily's heart dropped into her stomach. This was it. The moment they said it was too much, too complicated, not their problem. The moment she'd been bracing for. But Bear wasn't finished. We're not going to buy it, because your daddy's bike belongs to you, and someday when you're old enough, you're going to ride it and remember him proper. What we are going to do is make sure your mama gets every single treatment she needs, that your bills get paid, that your house is safe, and that you never have to walk 3 miles in the cold again carrying a burden that should never have been yours in the first place. Lily's brain couldn't process what she was hearing. The words didn't make sense. People didn't just do this. Strangers didn't save you. The world didn't work this way. She'd learned that lesson when her father fell, when her mother got sick, when the hospital turned them away. The lesson was clear. You're on your own, and love doesn't pay bills, and nobody's coming to save you. Except here were 12 men in leather and denim, covered in scars and tattoos, and the kind of rough history that made mothers pull their children closer when they walked past. And they were telling her that the lesson was wrong, that sometimes someone does come, that family isn't just blood, it's who shows up when everyone else walks away. Why? The word came out as a broken whisper. You don't even know me. We know you now, Bear said simply, and that's enough. He stood, turned to his brothers. When he spoke, his voice carried the tone of a general issuing battle orders. This wasn't a request or a suggestion. This was a promise being forged in real time. And everyone in that room knew that when Bear made a promise, heaven and hell both got out of the way. Crow, you're on bills. I want every medical debt, every utility company, every creditor that's been hounding this family. I want names, numbers, and totals by tonight. Preacher, you handle the hospital. Find out who we need to talk to about getting Sarah into immediate treatment. I don't care what it costs. Tank. He nodded at a massive man with a shaved head and a scar across his cheek. You're on housing. That eviction notice disappears. Pay the landlord. Buy the building. I don't care. Make it gone. The orders kept coming, each biker receiving a specific mission. Someone to coordinate transportation. Someone to set up meal deliveries. Someone to research the best oncologists in the state. This wasn't charity. This was a military operation, executed with the same precision and brotherhood that had kept this club running for 40 years. And you, little sister, are going to let us take you home so your mama doesn't worry herself sicker. You did your part. You were brave enough to ask for help. Now let us do ours. Lily felt something break open inside her chest. Not breaking bad, breaking open like a dam that had been holding back a flood. The tears came hard and fast, racking sobs that shook her whole small body. She didn't cry pretty. She cried like a child who'd been holding the world together with shoestrings and prayers, and someone had finally said it was okay to let go. Bear picked her up without asking permission, settled her against his chest like she was precious cargo. She buried her face in his leather vest, and it smelled like motorcycle exhaust and cigarettes, and something else. Safety, maybe. The kind of safety she hadn't felt since her father died. "One more thing, Lily," Bear said as they walked toward the door, his brothers falling into formation behind them. "Your daddy was right about us. We do have a code, and part of that code is this. Nobody messes with our people. Your mama is our people now. You're our people. And anybody who has a problem with that." He paused, and his voice dropped to something dark and absolute. "They have a problem with 200 Hell's Angels." Outside, the sun had finally burned through the cloud cover, painting the frost-covered motorcycles in shades of gold. The engines were still cold, but they wouldn't be for long. Bear carried Lily toward his bike, a massive black and chrome machine with ape-hanger handlebars and a seat worn soft from 10,000 miles of road. But he didn't put her on the bike yet. Instead, he set her down gently and knelt one more time, his massive hands on her thin shoulders, his eyes locked on hers with the kind of intensity that made promises permanent. "Listen to me, Lily. I need you to believe what I'm about to say. Your mama is going to be okay. Maybe not perfect, maybe not cured, but she's going to have every fighting chance we can give her. Your house is going to be safe. Your bills are going to be paid. And that Harley? That beautiful bike your daddy built with his own hands. It stays exactly where it is until you're old enough to ride it. And when that day comes, we're going to be there to teach you how." Lily nodded, unable to speak. Bear pulled her into a hug that was awkward and fierce and probably too tight. But she didn't care. She wrapped her skinny arms around his neck and held on like he was the only solid thing left in a world that had turned to quicksand. When he finally released her, Bear stood and turned to his brothers. He didn't need to say anything. They all knew. This wasn't just about one sick woman and one desperate kid. This was about every time the system had failed people they loved. Every time money mattered more than mercy. Every time the powerful crushed the powerless and called it business as usual. Not today. Not this time. Not on their watch. "Brothers," Bear's voice carried across the parking lot like a war drum. "We ride." Maybe you've never walked 3 miles in the cold, carrying a burden too heavy for your shoulders. Maybe you've never had to choose between your father's memory and your mother's life. But if you've ever felt like the system failed you, if you've ever been told that love doesn't pay bills and compassion doesn't cover debt, then you know what Lily felt standing in that parking lot. You know that moment when strangers become the family blood never gave you. And if you're watching this, thinking, "I wish someone had shown up for me like that," listen close. There are still people like Bear in this world. Still brothers and sisters in leather who live by a code the rest of us forgot. Stay with us to see what they did next. The ride to Lily's house wasn't long, 8 miles through residential streets that got progressively smaller and more broken down as they went. But it wasn't a quiet journey. Word had spread through the Hells Angels network like wildfire through dry grass. A little girl, dead father, Dying mother. System failure. The kind of story that made old bikers remember why they'd joined the club in the first place, back when they were young and angry, and still believed they could make a difference. Bear's phone had been buzzing non-stop since they left the clubhouse. Text messages flooding in from chapters across Michigan. From Detroit. From Grand Rapids. From Traverse City. From brothers who'd heard third hand about a 7-year-old walking 3 miles in the cold to sell her inheritance, and who wanted to know one thing. What do you need? Bear needed everything, and his brothers were going to deliver. Lily sat in front of Bear on his bike, his massive arms caging her in safely, her small hands gripping the handlebars even though she wasn't steering. Behind them, 12 motorcycles rode in tight formation. Crow, Preacher, Tank, and 9 others whose road names carried stories of their own. The sound of their engines wasn't loud. It was apocalyptic. A rolling thunder that made windows rattle and dogs bark, and people come out onto their porches to watch this armored cavalry pass through their neighborhood. They weren't trying to be subtle. Subtlety wasn't the point. The point was presence. The point was power. The point was sending a message to anyone who might be thinking about evicting a dying woman or denying medical care to someone who couldn't pay. You're not dealing with a helpless family anymore. You're dealing with us. Lily's house was a small ranch-style home with peeling yellow paint and a yard that had gone to weeds. The grass was brown and overgrown. One shutter hung crooked. The mailbox leaned at a drunken angle. But there were still flower pots on the porch, empty now, but someone had cared enough to plant them once. Someone had tried to make this place a home. Bear killed his engine. Behind him, 11 other engines fell silent in synchronized precision. The sudden quiet was almost louder than the roar had been. "That's my house," Lily whispered. And there was shame in her voice. Shame that these men with their powerful bikes and their confident presence were seeing how small her world had become. How broken. "It's a good house," Bear said firmly, and he meant it. 4 walls, a roof, a place where a father had loved his daughter and a mother was fighting to stay alive. That made it sacred. "Let's go meet your mama." The front door opened before they reached the porch. A woman stood in the doorway, and even from a distance you could see the cancer eating her alive. Sarah was thin in a way that had nothing to do with diet and everything to do with disease. Her skin had that grayish pallor of someone whose body was consuming itself for fuel. Her hair, what was left of it, was wrapped in a faded blue scarf. She wore sweatpants and an oversized shirt that hung on her like a tent, but her eyes were sharp. Alert, afraid, and fierce in equal measure. "Lily!" Her voice cracked with relief and anger and a mother's particular brand of terror. "Where have you been? I woke up and you were gone. I've been calling and calling." Then she saw the bikers. 12 massive men in leather and tattoos standing in her yard like an invading army. Her face went white. "Oh my God! Lily, get away from them! Get in the house right now!" "Mama, wait!" Lily started, but Sarah was already moving, stumbling down the porch steps with the kind of panicked strength that mothers summon when they think their children are in danger. Bear held up both hands, palms out, the universal gesture of peace. But he didn't step back, didn't retreat, just stood there, solid as a mountain, and let this dying woman see that he wasn't afraid of her fear. "Mrs. Sarah," he said, his voice carrying clear and calm across the yard. "My name is Bear. I'm the president of the Hells Angels Michigan chapter. Your daughter came to our clubhouse this morning. She was trying to sell her daddy's motorcycle to pay for your medical treatment." Sarah stopped mid-step. The color drained from her face completely. "She what?" "She walked 3 miles in the cold, came into a building full of strangers, and offered to sell the last thing she has of her father, Because she's scared she's going to lose you. Bear's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. The words themselves carried enough weight to crush stone. She's 7 years old, and she's carrying a burden that would break most grown men. And we're here to make sure she doesn't have to carry it anymore. Sarah looked at Lily, and the expression on her face was something Lily would remember for the rest of her life. Not anger, not disappointment, just a devastation so complete it was almost physical. The knowledge that her daughter had been that desperate, that alone, that scared. "Lily, baby." Sarah's voice broke. You shouldn't have." "I had to, Mama." Lily pulled away from Bear and ran to her mother, wrapped her thin arms around Sarah's waist. "They said you only have weeks. They said you can't get treatment unless we pay. I heard you crying last night. I can't lose you too. I can't." Sarah collapsed to her knees, pulling Lily tight against her chest, and the sobs that tore out of her were the kind that came from a place beyond pain, beyond fear, the place where mothers lived when they realized their children had been forced to become adults because the world wouldn't protect them the way it should. Bear gave them a moment. The other bikers stood silent, respectful, letting this woman grieve and hold her daughter. Then slowly, Bear approached. He knelt in the dead grass beside them, close enough to speak quietly, but far enough to not intrude. "Sarah," he said gently, "I know you don't know me. I know this looks crazy, but I need you to listen. Your bills are, all of them. They're going to be paid. Your medical treatments are going to be covered. That eviction notice? Gone. Your utilities? Handled. Your daughter's bike? It stays in your garage until she's old enough to ride it herself." Sarah lifted her tear-stained face. "I don't understand. Why would you? We can't pay you back. We have nothing. I'm dying, and when I'm gone, Lily will have even less." "We don't want to be paid back," Bear interrupted. "This isn't a loan. This is a plea, taking care of family. And whether you knew it or not, you became family the moment your daughter walked through our door." "But I'm not," Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm not going to make it. The cancer is stage 4. Even with treatment, the doctors said you have weeks without treatment, and maybe months with it. That means we buy you time. And in that time, maybe there's a miracle. Maybe there's a new treatment. Maybe there's a remission nobody expected. Or maybe..." Bear's voice gentled even further. "Maybe we just make sure that whatever time you have left, you spend it with your daughter, instead of drowning in debt and fear. Maybe we make sure that when Lily remembers you, she remembers a mama who was loved and cared for, not one who died alone because the system failed her." Sarah stared at him, and Lily watched her mother's face cycle through disbelief, hope, fear, and finally something that looked almost like surrender. The good kind. The kind that said maybe it was okay to stop fighting alone. "I don't know what to say," Sarah whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Bear replied. "Just let us help." Behind them, one of the bikers, a man named Tank with a shaved head and shoulders like a linebacker, spoke up. "Sarah, my old lady had breast cancer 5 years ago, stage 3. They said she had maybe a year. She beat it. She's been in remission for 4 years now. I'm not saying your story will be the same, but I am saying that giving up before the fight is over isn't the way." Another biker, younger, with red hair and a scar across his jaw, stepped forward. "My sister had leukemia when she was 12. Lymphoblastic. The treatments damn near killed her, but she survived. She's 26 now. got 2 kids. Sometimes the odds are just odds. They're not guarantees. One by one, the bikers shared their stories. Mothers who'd survived, sisters who'd fought, brothers who'd lost. They weren't offering false hope. They were offering solidarity, the knowledge that this woman wasn't the first to face this monster, and she wouldn't have to face it alone. Sarah was crying again, but different this time. Not the hopeless, surrendered tears from before. These were the tears of someone who'd been drowning and suddenly felt solid ground under their feet. "Thank you," she finally managed. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "You thank us by fighting," Bear said. "You thank us by taking every treatment, trying every option, squeezing every second out of this life that you can. You owe that to your daughter. And you owe it to yourself." Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Bear stood, turned to his crew. "Preacher, Tank, you're with me. We're going to the hospital right now. I want Sarah checked in today. I don't care if we have to buy out their entire billing department. Crow, you stay here with the others. I want this house secured. Fix that shutter. Mow that lawn. Get the utilities back on. Make it look like people who give a damn live here." The bikers scattered immediately, moving with the kind of purposeful efficiency that came from years of riding together. Tank was already on his phone, calling hospital administrators. Preacher was pulling up contact lists for oncologists. Crow was directing 2 of the younger bikers to grab tools from their saddlebags. But Bear wasn't done. He turned back to Sarah, his expression hardening into something that was equal parts promise and warning. "One more thing. The people who've been harassing you, the hospital billing department, the debt collectors, the landlord threatening eviction, they're going to get a visit from us. Not a violent one," he added quickly, seeing the flash of worry in Sarah's eyes. "But they need to understand that they're not dealing with a helpless widow anymore. They're dealing with 200 brothers who take care of our own. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me personally." Sarah's eyes widened. 200? Bear's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and a grim smile crossed his face. "Actually, make that closer to 300. Word's spreading. Chapters from across the state are rolling in. They want to be part of this. They want to show that the Brotherhood stands for something." And that's when they heard it. The sound that would become legendary in that small Michigan town. The sound that would be talked about in bars and diners and church basements for years to come. The rumble started distant, like thunder on the horizon. But it grew, and grew, and grew. Not just louder. Bigger. Deeper. A sound that vibrated in your chest and rattled your bones and made the ground itself seem unsteady. Lily grabbed her mother's hand. "What is that?" Bear's smile widened. "That, little sister, is 287 motorcycles. That's every Hell's Angel in Michigan who could drop what they were doing and ride. They're coming here, to your house, to make sure that everyone in this town, everyone in this whole damn state, knows that you're under our protection now." Sarah stood slowly, holding Lily close, and watched as the first wave of motorcycles appeared at the end of the street. Then another wave, and another. They kept coming, an endless procession of chrome and steel and leather, rolling thunder that turned the quiet residential street into something out of an epic movie. The neighbors came out of their houses. People stood on porches with their mouths open. Cars pulled over to the side of the road. Children pointed and stared. And still the bikes kept coming, filling the street, the yards, the driveways, until there was nothing but a sea of Harleys and the men who rode them. Nearly 300 bikers, all wearing their colors, all standing in silent solidarity, all here because a 7-year-old girl had been brave enough to ask for help. and because sometimes the roughest men have the softest hearts. Bear raised his hand, and 300 engines cut out simultaneously. The sudden silence was deafening. Then Bear's voice, amplified somehow by the sheer authority he commanded. "Brothers, sisters, we are here today because the system failed this family, because a good man died, and his widow got sick, and his daughter had to carry a burden no child should ever carry. We are here because nobody else stepped up. Nobody else gave a damn. So we're going to give a damn. We're going to show this family what brotherhood means. And we're going to make sure that every single person who profits from suffering knows that this stops here. Today. Now." 300 fists rose in unison. 300 voices roared approval. The sound was primal, ancient, the sound of a tribe claiming its own. Lily buried her face in her mother's shirt, overwhelmed. Sarah held her daughter and cried, her thin body shaking with sobs that were equal parts gratitude and disbelief. Bear turned to them, his expression gentle despite the chaos around them. "You're safe now, both of you, and I promise you on every mile I've ever ridden, every brother I've ever lost, every promise I've ever kept, we will see this through. Your mama's going to get the best medical care money can buy. Your bills are going to disappear. This house is going to be a home again. And that little girl," he pointed at Lily, "is going to remember that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather, and family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who shows up when the whole world turns its back." Sarah could barely breathe through the tears. How? How is this even possible? Tank stepped forward, a tablet in his massive hands. "We've already raised $47,000 through the club network. By tomorrow it'll be over $100,000. Every chapter is contributing. Every member is kicking in what they can. We've got lawyers volunteering to handle the medical debt negotiations. We've got accountants sorting the bills. We've got a contractor ready to fix your house for materials cost only. And we've got a direct line to one of the best oncology centers in Detroit. They're expecting you this afternoon." Sarah's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Crow hadn't caught her, gently guiding her to sit on the porch steps. Lily sat beside her, holding her mother's hand, watching these massive men orchestrate a miracle in real time. "This afternoon," Sarah's voice was barely audible. "This afternoon," Bear confirmed. "We'll ride with you. Full escort. You're not going to that hospital as a charity case or someone begging for help. You're going as a member of the Hells Angels family, and they're going to treat you with respect and dignity, or they're going to answer to me." Bear knelt again, this time looking at both of them. "I know this is overwhelming. I know it doesn't make sense. But sometimes life throws things at you that logic can't explain. A little girl walking 3 miles to save her dying mother. That doesn't make logical sense either. But she did it. And we're going to honor that courage by being exactly who she needed us to be." He stood, turned to address the assembled Brotherhood. "All right, brothers. You know what to do. Team 1, hospital logistics. Team 2, bill consolidation and payment. Team 3, house repairs and maintenance. Team 4, meal delivery setup for the next 6 months. Team 5, transportation coordination. Let's move." The bikers dispersed with military precision, each one knowing their role, each one committed to the mission. This wasn't just charity. This was what they'd all joined the Brotherhood for, to be part of something bigger than themselves, to protect the vulnerable, to be the wall between the innocent and everything that wanted to hurt them. Lily watched them work, these scary-looking men with their tattoos and scars and leather, and she realized something profound. Sometimes the world's definition of dangerous is completely backward. Sometimes the people who look the most frightening are the ones who will protect you the most fiercely. Sometimes angels wear black leather instead of white robes. As the sun climbed higher in the Michigan sky, transforming the frost into dew and the cold into something almost warm, Lily felt her mother's arm tighten around her shoulders, felt the trembling in Sarah's body start to ease, felt for the first time in months like maybe everything was going to be okay. Not perfect, not cured, not magically erased, but okay. And sometimes, when you've been drowning for so long, okay feels like a miracle. The transformation happened faster than Sarah thought possible, faster than logic should have allowed. But when 300 bikers decide something is going to happen, logistics tend to bend to their will. By noon, Sarah was sitting in a private consultation room at Detroit Medical Center's oncology wing, talking to Dr. Rebecca Chen, one of the top pancreatic cancer specialists in the Midwest. Not in some crowded waiting room with plastic chairs and outdated magazines. Not filling out endless financial paperwork while nurses avoided eye contact. In a real consultation room, with real attention, being treated like a human being whose life mattered. Bear sat in the corner of the room, arms crossed, silent but present. His leather vest looked wildly out of place against the sterile white walls and medical equipment, but nobody had asked him to leave. Nobody had dared. The hospital administrator who'd tried to discuss payment plans had taken one look at the parking lot full of motorcycles and the lobby full of tattooed men, and suddenly all the financial barriers had evaporated like morning fog. You know what's beautiful about this? It's not that 300 bikers showed up with money. It's that they showed up, period. Because here's the truth most of us learn too late. The world measures you in dollars, but family measures you in presence. The hospital didn't suddenly care about Sarah because she could pay. They cared because 300 people stood up and said, "She matters." If you've ever been the person the system tried to erase, if you've ever sat in a waiting room being told that care has a price tag that your life can't afford, this story is for you. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the outcasts remember what the respectable forgot. That human life is worth more than the balance sheet says. Dr. Chen was reviewing Sarah's medical history with the kind of thoroughness that Sarah hadn't experienced since her diagnosis. Actually reading the charts, actually asking questions, actually treating her case like something solvable instead of something hopeless. Your previous oncologist wasn't wrong about the severity, Dr. Chen said, her tone clinical but not cold. Stage 4, pancreatic with liver metastasis, is extremely serious. But there have been significant advances in treatment protocols in the last year. Combinations of FOLFIRINOX chemotherapy with immunotherapy agents have shown promising results in extending quality of life and, in some cases, achieving partial remission. Sarah's hands trembled in her lap. Lily sat beside her, holding her mother's hand with both of her small ones. Quality of life means... It means we focus on giving you time. Good time, not just time spent sick from treatment, while we fight this aggressively. I'm not going to lie to you and say we can cure this, but I am saying that writing you off with weeks to live was premature. With the right treatment protocol, we could be talking months, possibly a year or more. And in oncology, every month matters. New trials open. New drugs get approved. We buy you time, and time buys you chances. A year. The word hung in the air like a prayer. 3 months ago, a year had seemed like nothing. Barely enough time to watch Lily finish 2nd grade. Not enough to see her 8th birthday. But now a year felt like an entire lifetime. Christmas, summer, Lily's birthday, maybe even the next school year. Time enough for memories. Time enough for goodbyes that weren't rushed and terrified. Time enough to live. When can we start? Sarah's voice was steady, despite the tears running down her face. "Today," Dr. Chen said, "we'll do a full workup. Blood work, updated scans, genetic markers. Then we'll start your first infusion tomorrow morning. The treatment will be aggressive, and you'll have side effects. But we're going to manage them, support you through it, and give you the best fighting chance you can have." Lily squeezed her mother's hand so tight it hurt. "You hear that, Mama? Tomorrow. We start fighting tomorrow." Sarah pulled her daughter close, buried her face in Lily's hair, and let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe hope wasn't a foolish thing after all. Bear's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood. "Ladies, I need to step out for a minute. Doctor, you take good care of them. They're family now." It wasn't a request. Dr. Chen met his eyes and nodded. "I will." Outside the consultation room, the hospital corridor was lined with bikers, not causing trouble, not being loud, just present. A human wall of leather and muscle that said, "These people matter. They're not alone. And if you have a problem with that, take it up with us." Bear walked past his brothers, giving subtle nods of acknowledgement, and stepped outside into the parking lot, where Crow was waiting with an update. "Bills are handled," Crow said, consulting his phone. "We've got 53,000 raised so far. Hospital's been paid for the first 3 months of treatment up front. The eviction notice has been legally voided. Tank found out the landlord had violated housing code in 6 different ways. So our lawyer made a few calls, and suddenly they're very eager to let Sarah stay rent-free while they fix the violations. Electric company has been paid through the end of the year. Water, too. We've got meal deliveries set up through a local restaurant that's donating half the cost. And the house..." He grinned. "You need to see what the boys did to the house." Bear allowed himself a rare smile. "Show me the photos." Crow pulled up his phone, swiped through a dozen images. The house that had looked abandoned and broken that morning was transformed. The lawn was mowed, edged, and already showed signs of fresh seed being spread. The shutters were repaired and painted. The mailbox stood straight. The flower pots on the porch had been filled with hardy mums in autumn colors. The peeling paint had been touched up. Even the cracked driveway had been patched. But it was the garage that made Bear's throat tighten. Someone had cleaned it, organized it, and in the center, gleaming under fresh LED shop lights, sat Lily's father's Harley. The midnight blue paint with silver flames had been polished until it shone like new. The chrome sparkled. The leather seat had been conditioned, and leaning against the wall beside it was a hand-painted sign that read, "Reserved for Lily, future rider." "Who did that?" Bear asked, his voice rougher than usual. "Preacher," Crow said quietly. "Used to do custom paintwork before he joined the club. Said every little girl should know her daddy's legacy is waiting for her." Bear nodded, not trusting himself to speak. This was what Brotherhood meant. Not just the big gestures, the money, the medical care, the legal intervention, but the small ones too. The thoughtfulness. The understanding that a 7-year-old needed to know that her father's memory was safe. That his bike would be there when she was ready. "We're doing good work today," Bear finally said. "Best kind of work," Crow agreed. Inside the hospital, Sarah's testing was underway. Blood draws, imaging scans, consultations with nurses about her current symptoms and medication history. Lily stayed close the whole time, holding her mother's hand during the needle sticks, sitting quietly during the long scan sessions, being braver than any 7-year-old should have to be. But she wasn't alone. Every time she looked up, there was a biker nearby. Tank brought her a hot chocolate from the cafeteria. A woman biker named Raven, tall, blonde, with intricate rose tattoos covering her arms, sat with Lily during one of Sarah's longer scans and told her stories about riding across the country, describing mountains and deserts and ocean highways in ways that made Lily forget, just for a little while, where she was and why. "You ever been on a motorcycle?" Raven asked. Lily shook her head. "My dad was going to teach me when I got bigger. He always said motorcycles were freedom machines." "Your dad was right," Raven said. "Best kind of machine. When you're old enough, we'll teach you. Bear's already said so. You're going to ride that beautiful Harley your daddy left you, and you're going to feel what he felt. Wind in your face, road under your wheels, nothing but sky above you. Freedom." Lily's eyes shone. "You really think I'll get to?" "I know you will," Raven said. "Your daddy's bike is waiting for you. We made sure of it." When Sarah emerged from her final scan, exhausted but upright, she found Lily curled up next to Raven, both of them looking at photos on Raven's phone. Pictures of motorcycle rallies, cross-country rides, sunsets viewed from desert highways. "She's a natural," Raven said to Sarah. "Got the curiosity for it. The respect. Your husband raised her right." Sarah's smile was tired but genuine. "He would have loved seeing her on that bike someday." "He will," Raven said firmly. "Maybe not from here, but from wherever he is, he'll see it, and he'll be proud." By late afternoon, all the tests were complete. Dr. Chen scheduled Sarah's first treatment for 8 a.m. the following morning, with a comprehensive plan laid out for the next 6 months. Transportation was arranged. 2 bikers would rotate driving Sarah to and from treatments, making sure she never had to worry about getting there or getting home safely afterward. The ride back to the house was different from the morning's journey. Sarah sat on the back of Tank's bike, Lily on the back of Bear's. The escort was smaller now, just a dozen riders instead of 300. But the message was the same. This family is protected. This family matters. When they pulled up to the house, Sarah actually gasped. Even having seen the photos, the reality was overwhelming. Her home, which had been slowly dying along with her, looked alive again, cared for, loved. But it was what waited inside that broke her completely. The living room had been cleaned, furniture arranged properly, windows washed until they sparkled. The kitchen had been stocked, refrigerator full of easy-to-prepare meals, pantry organized with staples and snacks. On the counter sat a binder with every bill, every medical document, every piece of financial paperwork organized and labeled. A note on top read, "Everything's handled. You focus on fighting. We'll handle the rest. The Brotherhood." In Lily's bedroom, someone had made the bed with fresh sheets, organized her toys, and left a stuffed motorcycle on her pillow with a tag that said, "For brave girls who walk 3 miles in the cold. Love, Raven." And in the garage, when Bear led them there, Sarah saw her husband's motorcycle restored to glory. But more than that, she saw the sign. Reserved for Lily, future rider. She broke then. Just completely broke. Sank to her knees on the clean garage floor and sobbed. Huge, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deeper than grief, deeper than gratitude. From that place where humans keep the emotions that don't have names. The feeling when strangers become family. When hope returns after you've said goodbye to it. When the world shows you that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. Bear knelt beside her, didn't try to stop the crying, didn't offer empty platitudes, just put one massive hand on her shoulder and let her cry herself out, while Lily hugged her from the other side. When Sarah could finally breathe again, she looked up at Bear with red, swollen eyes. "Why? I still don't understand why you're doing all this." Bear was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. Then, 23 years ago, my little sister got sick. Leukemia. She was 9. My parents couldn't afford the treatment. We lost our house, lost everything, and nobody helped. Nobody gave a damn. She died 6 months later in a county hospital bed, and I stood there watching, knowing that if we'd just had money, she might have lived. He paused, his jaw tight. I can't change what happened to my sister. Can't go back and save her. But I can make damn sure that when a little girl walks 3 miles in the cold to save her dying mother, somebody shows up. Somebody helps. Somebody gives a damn. That's why. Sarah reached out, took his scarred hand in both of hers. I'm so sorry about your sister. Me too, Bear said. But today we win one. Today your daughter doesn't grow up watching her mother die because the system decided she wasn't worth saving. Today, we prove that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. And we showed up. Behind them, the other bikers stood silent, many with their own stories of loss, their own reasons for being here. This wasn't just about Sarah and Lily. This was about every time the system had failed someone they loved. Every time money mattered more than lives. Every time the vulnerable were crushed because they had no one to stand with them. Not this time. This time, the vulnerable had 300 brothers and sisters in leather who said enough. This time, love showed up riding steel horses and wearing the kind of armor that protected souls, not just bodies. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the restored yard, the bikers began to leave. One by one, they said their goodbyes, some with hugs, some with handshakes, some with just a nod and a promise to check in. But every single one of them made sure Sarah and Lily knew. You're not alone. You call if you need anything. Day or night. We're here. Bear was the last to leave. He stood on the porch with Sarah and Lily, the evening air cool but not cold, the smell of fresh-cut grass replacing the earlier scent of decay and abandonment. Treatment starts tomorrow at 8, he said. Tank will be here at 7:30 to drive you. Don't argue with him about it. He's already claimed the job. After treatment, he'll bring you home and make sure you're settled. Raven's coordinating the meal deliveries. Crow's handling all communication with bill collectors and creditors. Preacher's your liaison with the hospital. And he paused. I'm the guy you call if anything goes wrong. Anything. You understand? Sarah nodded, tears streaming again. I don't know how to thank you. You fight, Bear said simply. You take every treatment. You try every option. You squeeze every single day out of this life that you can. You do that for your daughter. You do that for yourself. And you do that for my little sister, who didn't get the chance. That's how you thank me. He knelt one final time, eye level with Lily. You did good today, little sister. You were braver than most grown men I know. Your daddy would be proud. And I promise you, I swear on every mile I've ridden, we're going to see this through. Your mama's going to fight, and we're going to be right there fighting with her. Lily threw her arms around his neck, held on tight. Thank you for showing up. Bear's voice was rough when he replied. Always, little sister, always. He stood, gave Sarah one final nod, and walked to his bike. The engine roared to life, that familiar Harley rumble that Lily's father had loved, that Bear had ridden for 20 years, that represented freedom and brotherhood and the open road. As he pulled away, followed by the last few remaining bikes, the rumble fading into the distance, Sarah and Lily stood on their porch watching. The same porch where, just that morning, everything had seemed hopeless, where a dying mother and desperate daughter had faced extinction. But now the bills were paid. The house was secure. Treatment started tomorrow. The bike was safe. and 300 brothers and sisters in leather had proven that sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're the people society tells you to fear. And sometimes they're exactly who you need them to be. 6 months later, the Michigan winter had given way to spring. The kind of spring that feels like a promise after a hard season. Crocuses pushing through the last patches of snow. Trees budding green. The air carrying that particular scent of earth waking up. Sarah stood in her front yard, watching Lily practice riding a bicycle. Not the Harley yet. She was still too small for that. But the training wheels had come off last week, and Lily was wobbling down the sidewalk with the kind of fierce determination that had carried her 3 miles through the cold to save her mother's life. Sarah's hair had grown back in soft curls after the second round of chemo. She was still thin, still tired, still carrying cancer in her body that the scans showed was stable, but not gone. But she was here, alive, watching her daughter ride a bike on a spring morning. 6 months ago, she hadn't believed she'd see this day. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. The aggressive treatment protocol had worked better than expected. The tumors had shrunk. The liver metastasis had stabilized. Dr. Chen used words like responding well, and extended timeline, and quality of life. Not cure, not remission, but time. Precious, beautiful time. A familiar rumble echoed down the street. Sarah smiled before she even turned around. She'd learned to recognize that sound, the particular thunder of Bear's Harley, distinct from all the others, even though they all looked similar to her untrained eye. Bear pulled up to the curb, killed the engine, swung his massive frame off the bike with the practiced ease of someone who'd been riding for decades. He was wearing his usual leather vest, the Hells Angels patch worn soft from years of weather and road. But today, he carried a package under one arm. "Morning, Sarah," he called out. "How you feeling?" "Tired," she admitted. "But good tired. Treatment tired, not dying tired. There's a difference." "There is," Bear agreed. He'd learned the distinction over the past 6 months, watching Sarah fight through the brutal cycles of chemotherapy and recovery. Some days were hard. Some days were terrible. But she'd fought through every single one, and she was still here. Lily abandoned her bike and ran over, launching herself at Bear with the kind of trust that only children who've been saved can have. He caught her easily, lifted her up like she weighed nothing. "Uncle Bear! Did you see me? I rode all the way to the end of the block without falling." "I saw," Bear said, setting her down gently. "Your old man would be proud. You've got his balance." The title, Uncle Bear, had stuck somewhere around month 3. None of the bikers had asked for it, or encouraged it. Lily had just started calling them that. Uncle Bear, Uncle Tank, Uncle Crow, Aunt Raven. And it fit, because that's what they were, now. Family. The kind you choose. The kind that shows up. Bear handed the package to Sarah. "This came for you. From the club." Sarah opened it carefully. Inside was a leather vest, cut like the ones the bikers wore but sized for her. On the back, instead of the Death's Head logo, was a phoenix rising from flames. Underneath it, in careful silver stitching, Hells Angels, honorary member, Sarah. She stared at it, unable to speak. "You fought like one of us," Bear said quietly. "Faced down something that would break most people. And you didn't quit. Didn't surrender. That makes you family. Official family. The club voted unanimously." Sarah's hands trembled as she held the vest. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just know that you're not alone. You're never going to be alone again." Lily was jumping up and down. "Does this mean Mama can ride motorcycles with you?" Bear laughed, a sound that Sarah had learned meant he was genuinely happy. "Maybe someday, when she's feeling stronger. For now she rides in the cage." He gestured to Tank's truck pulling up behind him, "where it's safe and warm." The months had developed a rhythm. Every treatment day, Tank or one of the other bikers would drive Sarah to the hospital. They'd wait through the infusions, bring her coffee and magazines, sit with her during the long hours when the chemicals dripped into her veins and tried to kill the cancer faster than they killed her. Then they'd drive her home, make sure she was settled, check on Lily, and quietly disappear until the next time they were needed. The bills had stayed paid. The house had stayed secure. The meals had kept coming. The Hells Angels had built a support system around this family that functioned like a well-oiled machine, because that's what Brotherhood did. You showed up. You stayed. You didn't quit until the fight was won, or there was nothing left to fight for. And Sarah was still fighting. Still here. Still winning, one day at a time. "There's something else," Bear said, pulling an envelope from his vest pocket. "The club took up a collection. Between all the chapters in Michigan, plus some support from chapters in Ohio and Indiana who heard the story, we've raised enough to set up a trust fund for Lily, for college or mechanic school if she wants to follow in her daddy's footsteps, or whatever she dreams up. It's hers, protected. Nobody can touch it." Sarah's legs went weak. "How much?" $87,000. The number didn't compute. Couldn't compute. That was more money than Sarah had made in 3 years before getting sick. More than her husband's life insurance had paid out. More than she'd ever imagined having. "Why?" she whispered. "You've already done so much. The medical bills, the house, the food, everything. Why this too?" Bear's expression was serious, almost grave. "Because 6 months ago, a little girl thought she had to sell her father's motorcycle to save her mother's life. That should never happen. Ever. We can't fix the whole broken system, but we can make damn sure that Lily never has to make a choice like that again. She gets to be a kid. She gets to go to school and have dreams and plan a future. That's what this money represents. Freedom from fear." Sarah sank down onto the porch steps, the vest still clutched in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Not sad tears. Not even happy tears exactly. Something deeper. The tears of someone who'd been shown a kindness so profound, it redefined what she thought humans were capable of. Lily sat beside her mother, leaning against her shoulder. "Don't cry, Mama. These are the good guys. They always make things better." And that was the truth of it, wasn't it? The world had taught Sarah that rough men with tattoos and leather were dangerous, that you crossed the street to avoid them, that you protected your children from them. But when the system had failed her, when the hospitals had turned her away, when the bills had piled up, and the eviction notice had arrived, and death had started measuring her in weeks instead of years, it wasn't the respectable people who'd shown up. It wasn't the neighbors or the church or the government agencies designed to help the vulnerable. It was the bikers, the outlaws, the men and women that society told her to fear. They were the ones who'd answered a desperate child's plea, who'd paid bills without asking for credit, who'd sat through chemo sessions and fixed broken houses and organized meal trains and set up trust funds, who'd shown up and stayed and fought alongside her when everyone else had walked away. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride motorcycles and have faces that would scare you in a dark alley. Sometimes the people society tells you to fear are the ones who'll save your life. Bear helped Sarah to her feet, steadied her when she wobbled slightly, still weak from this week's treatment. "You good?" "I'm good," she said, and she meant it. Not perfect, not cured, but good, alive, fighting, loved. "The club's having a ride next weekend," Bear said. "Spring rally. You should come. Bring Lily. We'll put her in a sidecar so she can feel what it's like. Start getting her ready for when she's old enough to ride her daddy's bike." Lily's eyes went wide with excitement. "Really? I can go on a motorcycle?" "Really," Bear confirmed. "With your mama's permission." Sarah looked at her daughter's face, lit up with joy and hope, and the kind of fearless excitement that children have before the world teaches them to be afraid. She thought about her husband, who'd loved these machines and the freedom they represented, who'd talked about teaching Lily to ride someday. "He would have wanted this," Sarah said quietly. "I know," Bear replied. "That's why we're doing it." That weekend, Lily rode in a sidecar attached to Raven's bike, wearing a helmet that was too big for her, and a smile that was too wide for her face. She experienced what her father had tried to explain with words, but could only truly be understood through feeling: the rush of wind, the rumble of the engine, the sensation of moving through space with nothing between you and the world except speed and courage. Sarah watched from Tank's truck, following the procession of motorcycles through Michigan back roads, and she cried again. But these were different tears. These were the tears of a mother who'd thought she'd never see her daughter experience this. Who'd thought the cancer would steal these moments. Who'd learned that sometimes, when you're drowning, angels show up riding steel horses. The rally ended at a lakeside park where the club had organized a picnic. Families everywhere, bikers with their wives and husbands, their children, their grandchildren. People who looked scary from a distance, but who were passing potato salad and helping kids on the swings and laughing at terrible jokes. Bear found Sarah sitting on a picnic table, watching Lily play tag with a group of biker kids who'd adopted her into their pack without hesitation. "You know what I realized?" Sarah said without looking at him. "For months, I've been thanking you, saying I don't know how to repay you, but that's the wrong way to think about it." "How so?" "Because you didn't do this for repayment. You did it because it's who you are. Because when you say family, you mean it. Not as a metaphor or a nice idea, as a commitment, as a promise." She turned to look at him finally. "So instead of thanking you, I'm going to honor what you've done by living. Really living. By teaching Lily that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when the world turns its back. By making sure she grows up knowing that the roughest-looking people can have the softest hearts, and that judging by appearances is how you miss the heroes." Bear was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Your husband was a good man, Sarah. I never met him, but I know he was, because he raised a daughter brave enough to walk 3 miles in the cold to save her mother. And he loved a woman strong enough to fight cancer for 6 months and still be standing. That kind of goodness doesn't happen by accident." "He would have liked you," Sarah said. "All of you. He always said bikers understood something that regular people forgot. That freedom means nothing if you're not free to protect the people you love. That strength is only worth having if you use it to stand between the vulnerable and everything that wants to hurt them." "Smart man," Bear said. "He was." Sarah paused. "I wish he was here to see this, to see Lily so happy, to see me still fighting, to know that when I couldn't do it alone, an army showed up." "He sees it," Bear said with absolute certainty. "Wherever he is, he sees it, and he knows his girls are safe. That's all any father really wants." As the sun began to set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, the bikers gathered for their traditional end-of-rally ceremony. They formed a circle, hundreds of them, and one by one they raised their fists in silent salute. Not to a flag or a leader or an idea, to each other, to Brotherhood, to the promise that when one of their own needed help, the others would answer. Every time. No exceptions. No excuses. Sarah stood in that circle, wearing her honorary vest, holding Lily's hand, and felt something shift inside her chest. The fear that had lived there since her diagnosis, the terror of dying alone, of leaving Lily orphaned and helpless, it didn't disappear. Cancer didn't allow for that kind of certainty, but it quieted, because she understood now what she hadn't understood 6 months ago. She wasn't alone. Lily wasn't alone. They were surrounded by people who'd proven, not with words but with actions, that family shows up. That brotherhood means something. That sometimes the world's definition of dangerous is completely backward. The heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather vests with patches that tell stories of roads traveled and battles fought. Sometimes they ride motorcycles that sound like thunder and freedom. Sometimes they're the people that society tells you to fear, until the day you need them, and they show up, and they save your life. And family? Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who's there at 3 in the morning when you're too sick to stand. Who pays your bills without asking for credit. Who sits with your scared daughter and tells her stories until she can smile again. Who builds trust funds and fixes houses and makes promises they keep. Family is who shows up when the whole world walks away. And for Sarah and Lily, family wore leather and rode Harleys and had faces that would scare strangers in a dark alley. But they weren't strangers anymore. They were brothers, sisters, uncles and aunts, and the kind of chosen family that proves love has nothing to do with genetics and everything to do with showing up. Bear raised his fist one final time as the sun dipped below the horizon. 300 fists rose with his, and in that moment, with Lily beside her and an army of unlikely angels surrounding her, Sarah understood something profound. She'd been given proof that goodness exists, that heroes are real, that when a 7-year-old girl walks 3 miles in the cold, carrying a burden too heavy for her small shoulders, sometimes, just sometimes, the universe sends 300 bikers to carry it for her. Not because they have to, because they choose to, because that's what family does. Now here's what I want you to understand. Whether you're watching this in a quiet living room after a long day, or on your phone at 2 a.m. when sleep won't come, or sitting in a waiting room of your own right now. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather vests with patches that tell stories of roads traveled and battles fought. Sometimes they ride motorcycles that sound like thunder and freedom. Sometimes they're the people society tells you to fear, until the day you need them, and they show up, and they save your life. And family. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who's there at 3 in the morning when you're too sick to stand, who pays your bills without asking for credit, who sits with your scared daughter and tells her stories until she can smile again, who builds trust funds and fixes houses and makes promises they keep. Family is who shows up when the whole world walks away. If you've ever been Lily, desperate and alone, and carrying weight no child should carry, this story is yours. If you've ever been Sarah, sick and broke and out of options, this story is yours too. And if you've ever been Bear, or Crow, or Tank, or Raven, or any of those 300 riders who decided that one child's plea was their line in the sand, then you already know what brotherhood means. For everyone else, remember this. The next time you see someone who looks dangerous, who wears their scars on the outside, who rides loud and lives rough, remember that maybe, just maybe, they're the ones who'll show up when the respectable people turn away. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Join the Valiant Bikers family, because we're building a community of people who believe that sometimes the system fails, but people don't have to. Share this story, tell someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment. Have you ever been saved by an unlikely hero? Have you ever been that hero for someone else? We want to hear your story. The Hells Angels didn't just save one little girl and her dying mother. They proved that the world still has room for mercy, for brotherhood, for the kind of love that doesn't ask what you can pay back, only what you need right now. That's the ride we're on, and we're just getting started. Subscribe, comment, share, and remember, family is who shows up. Before we close, there's one more thing this story asks of us. Lily was 7 years old. She walked 3 miles alone in the freezing cold. She was carrying $60,000 of debt, an eviction notice, and a dying mother. And not one adult in her world had noticed how far she'd fallen. Not a teacher, not a neighbor, not a single person in the system that was supposed to protect her. That's the part of this story that should keep us up at night. Because Lily was brave enough to ask for help. Millions of children aren't. They go to school hungry and say nothing. They sleep in cold houses and tell no one. They watch a parent deteriorate from illness, from addiction, from despair. And they carry it alone because nobody taught them that asking for help was allowed. You and I, we're the adults who notice. Here's what Bear's brothers would want you to know. Because protection isn't only for people who wear leather. A child may need help if you notice. Coming to school repeatedly without a coat, food, or basic supplies. Unexplained bruises, flinching at sudden movements, or fear of going home. Talking about being responsible for a sick or absent parent. Chronic exhaustion, hunger, or wearing the same clothes for days. An adult child, meaning a child acting far older than their years, the way Lily had to. These aren't proof of abuse. They're invitations to ask one question. Are you okay? If you're worried about a child, yours, a neighbor's, a grandchild's. These resources exist for you. Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline, 1-800-422-4453. Available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to be certain. You just have to be concerned. Child Protective Services, CPS. Every state has a local CPS office. A simple search for CPS Report, Your State, will give you the number. Reports can be made anonymously. You will not ruin a family by calling. You might save one. Crisis Text Line. Text HOME to 741741 for children or adults in emotional crisis who aren't ready to speak out loud. 211 Helpline. Dial 2111 from any phone. Connects families to local emergency food, housing, medical assistance, and financial aid. Free. Confidential. Available in all 50 states. If Sarah had known about 211 earlier, she might never have been in that position at all. If one adult in Lily's life had noticed sooner, that little girl might never have had to walk those 3 miles alone. The bikers showed up after the crisis. We can show up before it. That's the ride worth being on.